Every single thing that comes into your mouth, you're thinking like, oh my god, what's in this? How many things? How many ingredients? What does that do? What's this do? That actually is more stress, causes more stress on your body than the food itself. And that stress on your body is more detrimental to your health than any fucking thing you're going to eat.
That's really going to spread into other areas of your life, and it's going to be able to give back a lot of control.
The majority of the things that why we cause the problems is because we're so stressed. And it's stressing out over food, stressing out over training, stressing out over your job. It's the stress that's causing most of the problems inside us, not the actual diet that you're on.
Not all ultra-processed foods are the same.
The more equipped that you are to be able to deal with stress, the better you're going to be able to react to it when it happens.
I would have identified myself as I am not a runner and I hate running.
Thoughts in your head that you have to just keep pushing past, because you'll be like, your body starts telling you, oh, you can't do this, you're too sore, you should probably stop now, let's give up after this K. Okay, let's just make it to the next K. And it's a constant battle in your head.
Sometimes people focus more on ice baths and saunas for recovery than the actual staples, which is going to be
Hey there, and welcome to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you're passionate about staying fit, healthy, and mentally sharp, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Matt Cooney, and each week we dive into the latest trends, expert insights, and actionable tips to help you take your fitness, nutrition, and mental well-being to the next level. Ready to level up your health and fitness? Let's jump in and get started.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Future Fitness Lifestyle. And everybody was just silent there because I don't know if it's the last episode of 2024. Actually, it will be by the time it's released. Am I right, Ro? Yeah, it will. Yeah. See, I'm not gone crazy.
Yes.
Although I look at, especially with the background, it looks like I'm taking some there's herbal medicine going on here. And we are all, we're basically, Tommy, you could be on your own if the Wi-Fi cuts out. 3 of us are on the same Wi-Fi. And if you hear, disclaimer, if you hear any cats and dogs in the next 45 minutes, it's just where we're at. We are actually outnumbered. Humans are outnumbered by cats and dogs here, about 10-1. So, guys, what we're going to do today is keep going with the fitness and health trends in 2024. So, as usual, I realized that we're never, ever going to get through all of them in one go. And even looking at the ones today, I was like, we could probably do a full podcast on each trend in itself. And I know, Tommy, you said that after last week. We definitely will. So last week we discussed, what did we discuss? High rocks, Ozempic, and wearable technology. So if you haven't listened to those and you have an interest in them, go back. We are going to probably talk about them a lot more, especially Ozempic, in individual podcasts, because I think we only touched the surface. But today, what I wanted to talk about first was another trend in nutrition, which is the trend of ultra-processed foods. So over the last year, 2024, I think there became kind of an explosion to do with ultra-processed foods. I think through social media, and you'll see people like Eddie Abu, if you're on social media, you've probably seen him. He now has millions of followers, telling everyone that everything is shit in the world and that they should just eat eggs, basically. We have people eating all their food off chopping boards. That's another trend that I've seen, which I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like, Eve, you wouldn't agree with that. And then we have people basically making content, walking around supermarkets, picking up things, going like, oh yeah, look at the ingredients in this and stuff like that. So it's become definitely more prevalent. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. We're about to find out. Eve, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you think about the rise, I suppose, in ultra-processed foods online?
I think people are kind of going a bit overboard with it. And I definitely think there's no need to go to that extent. And people are freaking out, oh, I need to cut this out of my diet, or I need to cut X, I shouldn't be having this, that, and the other. But they're actually kind of missing out on the big picture. And the way I kind of like to look at it is focusing on what you need to include in your diet and not kind of focusing on what you should be excluding. And there's too many people demonizing foods, like this is bad for you, that is bad for you, X, Y, and Z. And like I said, I think people need to be focusing on getting the basic foundations in place and, using a more balanced approach. If you're eating enough fruit, if you're eating enough veg, if you're eating enough healthy fat sources, getting enough fiber in your diet, eating proper structured meals and mostly nutrient dense options, then there's absolutely no issues with having some ultra processed foods. And if you enjoy them as well, your diet needs to be sustainable. And I think, it's really important to be able to eat foods you like, and as well as that, some of these foods are really convenient as well. So, they're handy options to have as part of a well-balanced diet. So yeah, I definitely think it's crazy, and people are just kind of going a bit overboard with it.
See, there's a big problem with everything you just said, Eve.
What?
Doesn't sell.
Yeah.
It's boring.
Yeah, actually,
Like,
it's funny
like you're.
because
Go ahead.
pretty much no matter how do I put this? Pretty much for every kind of population, it's those basics. There's like maybe five foundations for your health and your diet that you should follow. And whether you're like a normal person, whether you're an elderly person, whether you're a child, whether you're pregnant, going through the menopause, those foundations you'll always go back to them. But like you said, it's boring. It doesn't sell. It's people are looking for like the next thing to hop on, or they're kind of what's the next big craze, but they're just forgetting the basics, and the basics never fail. Like they're what everyone should be focusing on.
Where you can just eat raw testicles and get millions of followers like the Liver King. That seems to be the way forward.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like an active listener to this podcast here and going to like question, because I don't know much about what you've just said there, Matt, in terms of the social media influence of ultra processed food and that, what's kind of going on in the world. I don't ever really see that on my own algorithm. I don't follow any of those people. So maybe like even actually just sharing a bit of like what these type of people are actually sharing. And you might be able to talk a bit more about that. Obviously, I've heard of your man, that Eddie guy. I've just seen certain people just share certain stuff with him and that. But maybe you can talk just a little into maybe the type of information that is being shared out there, and I suppose the dangers of that, because I'd actually be very interested to know more about that.
So, yeah, I'll start, Eve, and you can add in. So basically, yeah, with ultra processed foods, what we know, right, is they're increasing in popularity in our diet. So I think at the moment around 57% of the people's calorie intake in the US is from ultra processed foods. So again, when you're thinking of ultra processed, think of stuff that's being processed. So cookies, ice cream, all that stuff. And we know in general, consuming more ultra processed foods will lead to worse health outcomes in general. So that's like the basis. But what people have done, and because of humans, they've taken that and gone so far extreme to look at like every single ingredient, every single food, demonizing it, like you shouldn't do this, X, Y, Z, this is going to kill you. And it's just extremism that has kind of taken over. And like I did in the last podcast, there's actually pros and cons with it. So it's generally a good idea to consume less processed foods and more whole foods. That's none of them, even the crazy people, will say this. But we all kind of know that. But then we have to understand that ultra processed foods are here. We can see it. Nearly 60% of people's diets has ultra processed foods in it. So just going and eliminating it isn't probably the answer, and it's the thing with ultra processed foods is they're very easy to overconsume. They tend to be tastier, they tend to be more calorie dense, they tend to be less filling, and they're more associated with like addictive like behaviors. You don't really see people going, oh my god, I'm addicted to broccoli, I cannot stop. Whereas cookies, ice cream, all that good stuff. So that's like outline of it. Tommy, any actually questions on that?
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I would be very aware, obviously, of I suppose for me, when I hear ultra processed food, it's made in a factory, that there's been things added to it that isn't natural to that food source. And straight away, my own mind comes to be like, okay, well, obviously there's chemicals in it, there's different sorts of ingredients added to it. So essentially my next thought process is like, what kind of negative impact is that having on me? And then when I haven't really heard the term ultra processed foods, I've heard the term processed foods. So then when you say that word, I suppose it does strike up a bit of fear in me to be like, whoa, okay, that doesn't sound good to me. And I suppose labeling it and trying to get an understanding of what is ultra processed these days. And that's why it's very interesting for me hearing you guys speak, because obviously this is what we're talking about, is like the dangers of social media and how people can be very, very influenced by people who have, I suppose, little to no information on it. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me what you're saying. What kind of comes up for me is, and probably like you might be able to answer this, like for me, like going to a supermarket, if I see veg in a packaged in a package, I'm like, well, that's been packaged, so is that good for me? Should I be picking the fruit that's not packaged? That's kind of where my kind of thought process goes to, like, because I obviously want to be a lot more health conscious when it comes to picking out food and that, but I don't obviously want to be like too over obsessive on it, but like I said, checking up the ingredients, looking up online, is this food good for me, is it not good for me, but also just have a little understanding with that, particularly around packaged food, and particularly around vegetables and that, if you can maybe even give a little bit of information on
Yeah,
that.
so with foods, there'll be like processed foods. There's kind of a spectrum with it. So there's like minimally processed foods, and then obviously the ultra processed foods. So the minimally, can't say that word, processed foods would be things like, frozen fruit, frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, or they've kind of been minimally processed. And the reason for this is obviously it'll help preserve their shelf life, help them last longer, but it doesn't really significantly change the nutritional content of them. So, example, if you have broccoli fresh off the shelf versus frozen broccoli, it's going to still be packed full of the nutrients. Whereas foods then that are ultra processed, they've kind of got a lot of things added to them. So it could be like artificial sweeteners, could be like sugar, could be fats, oils, salt, and a lot of the nutrients, they're kind of a lot lower in good nutrients. So they're obviously not as nutritious. So as you kind of know, like a bag of crisps is not going to be very nutritious. I mean, that's essentially a potato, but that potato has undergone a lot to get to the point of being a chip, with loads of other things added into it, like the oils, the salts, and everything like that. So yeah, that's basically kind of the difference then between like the ultra processed versus the minimally processed.
Yeah. And that's where one of my points was, like, not all ultra processed foods are the same. So it's an umbrella term for things. And that's where I think people take it and go like, ultra processed, everything's bad. But it's actually not. Like, there is some ultra processed foods that, again, have good things in them. Like, for example, just like, obviously protein bars are going to be ultra processed, but in protein bars you get protein, you have fiber, you have some nutrients. Things like wraps, granola, then you have, your cookies, ice creams and stuff like that. So they're not all the same. And that's where it's important that we don't just put everything into one bracket. And I think that's where the extremism comes in. And one of the negatives, I think, with this is it can affect people's relationship with food, because you
That
can
over
get to you can get to a point where, like you said, Tommy, like every single thing that comes into your mouth, you're thinking like, oh my god, what's in this? How many ingredients? What does that do? What's this do? That actually is causes more stress on your body than the food itself. And that stress on your body is more detrimental to your health than any fucking thing you're going to eat. So like, this is where people have to be careful, because your relationship with food is important. Like, yes, you want to be health conscious and you want to be healthy. Sometimes your pursuit of trying to be too healthy is unhealthy for you, because of the stress it's causing on you. Like, if you can't sit down and have a meal without like having to do a Pythagoras theorem of like these ingredients and stuff, like, you need to have a chat with somebody like me. And because that's not healthy. And I see it so much more. And that's where the stuff, that type of content, it serves a purpose, but sometimes people will take it in the wrong way and they run with it, and then it can actually create problems. And that's where, with relationship with food, a lot of people with the ultra processed foods, they start looking at individual ingredients instead of their diet as a whole. And your diet as a whole is going to be much more important than that bit of sweetener that's in X thing that you're having, And that's where, like Steve said at the start, I think people are missing the forest from the trees.
It's easier for humans to blame external things, like to be like, it's the ultra processed food, that's why I'm not able to lose weight and stuff, rather than be like, no, it's actually because you're not eating, your diet is mostly ultra processed food, rather than like you're not getting your fruit and veg in.
I think one thing actually does come to mind now, just as you were speaking, Matt, was I did see something, I think this year, an online trend, and maybe you can speak more into it, was there was people bashing porridge and protein, and I just seen some things being shared online, and I was like basically saying that like porridge and that was bad for you, and I just found that hard to understand. And then also obviously by seeing that, it created an experience for me, and the next time I went to go and eat porridge, I was almost questioning the fact that I was like, is this actually good for me or not, as you were saying, Matt. So now, as you said, I'm just meant to be enjoying this meal that I love, while what's actually going on for me at the same time is that I'm being stressed out with the fact that I'm not being mindful eating, because I'm thinking about something that I saw. Is this not good for me? I don't know, did you see that being shared online this year about oats and that?
Something literally has just come out about oats. I'm sure, Eve. Do you know this? Like in the last 2 days, I think I've seen it, where oats has now been put as something. It was on the news. Something, there was outrage over it. Like oats has been now labelled as, I don't want to say bad food, but something like that. I need to look into it more. But it's kind of crazy. And you mentioned it there about, like, this is the thing with ultra processed foods. People can get to the point of this guilt. So again, if we had dessert, we went out for dinner last night, we all had dessert. If we were all sitting there and being like, oh my God, I feel so bad for having this absolutely amazing, lovely dessert. We were sitting all around as a family enjoying this food. And Roisin, you said it on one of the podcasts recently, again, food is an experience. It's not just the ingredients. And like, that was actually a really, and even we were having a drink, glass of wine or something. It was actually a really healthy experience in terms of that social health.
Social health, yeah.
We were having a laugh. We were getting to see each other. We were bonding. So again, if I was sitting there going, I'm so guilty that this chef that made this amazing thing, that's where it's like, it's people, like you said, Roisin, people try to kind of like zone in on this one thing. Like, this is the answer, or this is the problem, when it's such a multifactorial issue, which kind of makes it, we'd love to just sit here and say, this is the answer. Everybody do this, but it's not.
Yeah, but it's so true there what you were saying about it. It really comes down to, and it's for everything, but it comes down to the relationship you have with food. Because even if you are the healthiest person in the world, if you are constantly guilty, and I noticed that after the first photo shoot, I went straight into the classic like guilt over food, and if you're feeling guilty over the food, you're not digesting it right. There's so many issues going on internally over it. Whereas when you have a more relaxed approach, and you're actually, like last night, taking in that we were with family, that it was an experience, that we weren't all concerned just about the food, you digest it better. Everything, it's better in your system even, and you don't have that guilt and that stress over the food. So I think that's the main thing. People need to focus on the individual relationship they have with food, rather than cutting out stuff and restricting, because that's always going to be a negative experience.
Yeah. And I think a big thing with a relationship with food is not looking at food as good or bad. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. If I say something like broccoli or mushrooms, everybody here probably unconsciously thinks that that's healthy, right? Which again, they're healthy foods. For some people, is it called oleosaccharides? There's things in broccoli and mushroom that really some people cannot digest, and it actually causes them serious gut issues. Is that good
like
for
IBS
them?
and stuff?
Probably not. Yeah, like people with IBS, and there's certain triggers. It's called oleosaccharides, I think.
Oleosaccharides.
Yeah, there's a group of foods that
that's like kale as well, is it, or something?
No?
Stress. Yeah, so that's like, and so that's like just straight away for me and Tommy might have broccoli. For him, he may be on the toilet for a day, like not good, not fun. For me, I might love it, So same thing with, like, let's take cake. Is that a good or bad thing? For me, if I like cake, if most of my diet is made up of good quality food sources, if I'm staying within my calorie budget and I'm eating it in a moderation, and maybe me having a bit of cake or chocolate stops me binging on a load of other stuff, that's probably good for me. So now, like, this cake is good for me and this broccoli is, quote unquote, not so good. Then on the flip side, if I don't like cake, probably not good for me. If I can't say no to it, if I just keep eating it, if I can't eat it in moderation, or if eating cake makes me start then to go overeat food, mightn't be the best option. So you can see there is no really good or bad. it really does depend on the context and looking. That's why you have to look at your diet as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think even using that, like the almost like 80-20 rule, where 80% of your diet is nutrient dense foods, whole foods, and then, you know, the other 20% could come from some funner foods. I think, what was that thing I heard before? Was it whole foods and soul foods? Matt, you probably remember this.
80% whole foods, 20% soul foods.
Yeah, so 80% foods that are obviously nutrient dense, and then 20% foods which are obviously good for the soul. So, you know, foods that you love having, foods that you enjoy having, and you know, you not having to cut them out of your diet, I think is
Yeah, but
important.
I think also coming back to, again, how you feel.
And disclaimer, I love broccoli.
Love broccoli.
You love what?
Broccoli.
But it's coming back to how you individually feel after eating food. Because, like you said there, Matt, like broccoli could be deemed healthy, and somebody could be like, "Oh, I should eat broccoli because it's healthy," but it's actually fucking up their system. But they're not even checking in with themselves, so they're just eating broccoli because they're meant to, but they're actually doing more damage to themselves. And same with like people who go on like raw food diets. If you're not used to eating raw food diet, and then all of a sudden you start like eating kale and stuff, it's so hard for like the human digestive to digest raw kale, you know, and you have to build that up. But people think, but this is the healthy option, I have to do this diet, and it's actually making them miserable, you know. So that's why I think it's even coming back to how you trial and error your food and see what kind of diet works for you.
And like the answer I have even for it is like moderation. That's just not sexy. It's like everything in life, nearly the danger is in the dose, you know. And if you do, like Tommy, you were saying about stressing out and wondering if this is like good or bad ingredients, if you followed basically the principles Eve laid out in terms of 80% of your diet is good quality, minimally processed foods, you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough fruits and vegetables,
Fiber.
you're probably getting enough fiber. By default, everything else really sorts itself out. You don't really have to worry about anything else. So if you can follow those principles, you don't really need to be overly obsessive with everything. And then, as Rose says, as you follow these principles, as you do it for a long period of time, you start to notice, hey, when I eat this, it doesn't agree with me. When I eat this way, you know, you follow the principles, and over time you will start to learn like what you enjoy, what works for you, and you can make these little tweaks while still within the guidelines. And that way it's never this overarching like just constant stress in your life of every single food that you're ever consuming, you know.
And yeah, I think it's a big part of it as well as, you know, it's sustainable if you kind of follow that principle, because it allows a bit more flexibility. Whereas if you're someone who's like following this super strict diet, I don't have any ultra processed foods, I only eat whole foods, like what are you going to do when you go out for dinner with your family? You can't order 9 boiled eggs in a restaurant. It's not going to work. Or
Right.
But also that
you want to be able to, you know, relax, enjoy some nice food, enjoy some meals out.
also that as well is like when people do go on these diets where they like restrict so much for a long period of time, and then they might go back to eating quote unquote normal, their body's not used to like the gluten or whatever, and then they start reacting to it and they think they fucked up their system, but it's just their body has been so long without it that you like have to slowly reintroduce foods back into your system. That was the whole thing with like, you know, gluten free and all these. That was like last year, wasn't it? The whole gluten free thing that everyone thought they had to go gluten free.
Yeah, and I see that a lot with dairy as well. Like people will cut dairy out of their diet because they think, oh, dairy is bad, and then, you know, they don't eat dairy for 2-3 months, and then, you know, they go have an ice cream one day and they get like a pain in their stomach, or, you know, they just have some negative symptom from that, and they're like, oh my god, it's the dairy, like it's killing me. But I'm like, if you haven't been
It's not
eating
used to it.
dairy and then you reintroduce it, you're going to experience symptoms because your body needs to get used to having the dairy again. And it's actually, if you cut dairy out of your diet, you will develop a slight lactose intolerance. But if you want to have it again, you have to reintroduce it and slowly build it back up again. And I see that happening a lot. And people think it's the
same
dairy
thing.
that's...
Yeah, it's literally the same thing as going to the gym after not going for months, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my god, I'm so sore, like I can never go to the gym again. It's like, no, that's the point. You're sore because
your
you
body
didn't
needs
do it
to...
for a long time.
You're not used to
and
it,
the more
yeah.
you do it, yeah, your body will adapt. And it's the same with food, you know. And it's like, I was explaining this to, like you were saying, Rob, about these kind of more extreme diets where you eliminate food groups or keto, whatever it is. It's like the body is always striving for balance. Like it operates best in the middle here. This is called homeostasis. It's like balance. So the more extreme you go with anything in life, not even food, training, the more away from the midline, the center, the balance, the harder it is to get back, you know? So it's like, that's where your body, the more extreme things you do, again, you know this from professional sports or people who take on these huge endurance things and that. Again, they know they're doing damage to their body eventually because of the extreme where they're going. They're going so far away from baseline, you know? So it's like understanding that is like a general overall principle in life, you know? It's not even just food.
I think that as well, like people don't realize, like our bodies are so fucking incredible. They literally can do everything that we need to do themselves. And the majority of the things that why we cause the problems is because we're so stressed. And it's stressing out over food, stressing out over training, stressing out over your job. It's the stress that's causing most of the problems inside us, not the actual diet that you're on, you know?
Yeah. And that's a good cue into our next trend. Stress is recovery techniques. So ice baths, saunas. So we won't say ice bath and sauna. We'll say cold water immersion and hot therapy. To be put it all in one. I think we're all going to be biased here, just to tell the audience, because I think we all love hot and cold therapy. Does anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all
right?
like addicts to
Yeah.
cold water therapy. It's going to be a very biased part of the podcast.
For good reason, I think.
Hard to find any negatives with it.
I was thinking of it. And will I start with the negatives or will we start positive? I do have one or two.
Go for it, Matt.
Okay, so one negative of cold water therapy is that it can affect muscle growth if you do it directly after training. A lot of people talk about this online. I'm like, it's such an easy thing to fix. Just don't get into an ice bath after the gym, like straight away. It's literally all you have to do and it's fixed. But that is a thing. Basically, when you work out in the gym, again, you're trying to build muscle, you're breaking down muscle fibers, which then creates an inflammatory response. This inflammation response is like part of the process of building muscle. When you get into freezing cold ice, again, that's part of it is to stop the inflammatory process. So it's like, again, to help you recover. So that's the kind of reasoning why you shouldn't get into an ice bath straight after weight training. The next kind of, you call it con, I have with it is sometimes people focus more on ice baths and saunas for recovery than the actual staples, which is going to be sleep, food, protein, and adequate like rest and recovery. So sometimes it's like, again, they're missing the forest from the trees. They're like, I have to do the sauna and ice bath. It's like, no, you're sleeping 3 hours a night. Like you could fucking live in the sauna. It's not going to do anything for you. You know, it's like, oh, I'm not recovering. I need to do more sauna and ice baths. Like, you know, you haven't consumed protein in a week and a half.
Yeah, you
like,
haven't taken a rest day.
You're
not drinking water. You're not.
Yeah, you're not hydrated. You're trying to train 7 days a week for 4 hours. There's no ice bath that's gonna help you here. You know, so
again, it's those extremes.
Definitely. I don't think it's a negative of sauna and ice baths because I love them, but it's people's priorities. They're not understanding it's I like the benefits of a sauna and ice bath are kind of outside of that for me, to be honest. They're more mental, which I'm sure we'll get into. Who's going to talk?
I thought you had another point.
I might say like one more negative might be not really a negative, but it's slightly on the border of it. Like people might take it to the extreme, you know. They think that they need to stay and like get into the sea for like 10-20 minutes or stay in the sauna for an hour, you know. And like you talk about balance, it's like there's obviously a big egotistical side of that too. It's like, but like how much too extreme are you going? Are you actually able to, have you built up a tolerance to be able to go that far, or is that actually going to cause you like hypothermia or I don't know what extreme heat does to dehydration, essentially obviously make you pass out. But like if you're pushing yourself that really, really hard and maybe your body is already in a place where it's really trying to recover from what you're actually recovering from, but you're pushing it even more towards the danger zone. So definitely like people might not understand the risks of going too far with it.
Yeah, and I think that's what people don't understand is also when you do, like I said, dangerous in the dose earlier. When you do anything like doing the sauna and ice bath to extreme, it's not actually, once you go too far, it's not promoting, it's not helping your recovery. It's actually causing more stress on the system, which then you can have to recover from. So you may actually be doing this and saying, I'm doing this for recovery, but it's actually causing you more stress, you know? And that's why, like, again, you just have to be mindful with extremes with doing it, you know?
Yeah, I think Eve, you hold the record for the longest ice bath out of us, is it? Did she do 4?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that because I'm kind of like an extreme person. So like when we were doing ice baths every day, so like we actually, I think what we did was we were adding on 10 seconds each day. So we got up to like 10 minutes, and that was probably the limit where we should have pushed it. But on the very last day, I was like, okay, I just want to do 15 minutes to see what it's like. But no, it wasn't like, it was probably very dangerous. I was in it way too long. I came out and I was shivering for about 2 hours after it.
Your
Like
organs were frozen.
my organs were probably like shutting down. So yeah, I definitely recommend with cold water therapy, especially if you're new to it, starting with a couple of seconds, building up to like a minute, 2 minutes, and just keeping the session short. And obviously, you know, being mindful of how you're feeling and how you kind of respond to it afterwards, and not being stupid like me.
And also don't get involved in sauna wars. Do you hear of this thing?
No.
It was actually your brother was telling me about it, Tommy, and I've seen Jesse Itzler put up a post about it. It's like, you know, when you go into the sauna and you have this, like, nobody says anything, but you have this mental game that you're not getting out before anybody else. Yeah, it's a real thing, because Jesse Itzler actually put up a post with some random guy, and he was like, this is the first guy that's ever bet me in sauna wars for like 20 years or something. And he explained what it is, you know. It's like 45 minutes or something he was in it, which again, we don't recommend that. And I think, though, for me, one of the biggest benefits of hot and cold therapy is the stress resilience and being able to improve your nervous system regulation, which is your ability to essentially handle stress. And it kind of does that through, when you do hot or cold therapy, it's actually putting your body under a little bit of stress, which then you recover from and you adapt to, so you become more resilient to it, which then, the same thing with like weight training, that's the same process. And then I think they have such a good carryover into life, because again, you become more resilient for any stressor in your life. And that's probably the biggest benefit for me, alongside the mental toughness. Actually, this is the biggest benefit, is doing something I don't want to do, because I don't like the hot or the cold, to be honest. I like lukewarm, in the middle, comfy. But for me, it's like doing something I don't want to do is probably the most rewarding thing. After those feelings after a good ice bath or sauna, is definitely the biggest. It's like, I don't know, you would have felt it as well. You get some weird high off it.
Natural high, yeah.
Yeah, and especially...
Totally. I think, as you said, Matt, you talked about your ability to be able to handle stress. And for me, like, one of the main reason I really done it was because I had been told, you know, that cold water therapy was amazing for anxiety relief. And a lot to do with feeling anxious. A person who experiences anxiety is that person feels very unsafe. And when you feel unsafe, it creates a lot of mental dialogue in your own head, but also physical sensations in your body. As you said, your ability then to be able to withstand that type of discomfort, in whether it's a cold shower or cold water or an ice bath, you're essentially just training yourself to be able to handle and deal with the stress that your body is currently under. And the more equipped that you are to be able to deal with stress, the better you're going to be able to react to it when it happens, because, as we all know, that life can be extremely de-stressing, and we all experience stress from time to time. But if you're voluntarily putting yourself into a place where you're essentially telling yourself, I'm okay here, because we all know how discomforting it is to be in a cold environment. It's just a simple thought that I like to say to myself, is that, like, I can handle this. For someone who maybe experiences a lot of anxiety, they have this perception that they're not able to deal with whatever it is they're experiencing anxiety around. And if you can train yourself to handle these types of situations, that's really going to spread into other areas of your life, and it's going to be able to give back a lot of control for you, because again, when we feel anxious, we feel out of control, but you're taking back control over that aspect of your life that is quite distressing for you. So it's definitely, for me, been one of the biggest influences in my own life. And when I started to see, one name comes to mind, and I've never let it go. James Smith, when he first started bashing cold water therapy, I even wrote a comment underneath his status when he did it. But obviously, I think he was just doing that. Obviously, that was his way of communicating to people and gathering attention, was just to bash things like that. I've never, if James, if you were listening to this one day, I've never forgiven you. And I've heard other people say it too. But I always say, like obviously, you got into that whole trend of thing of like this big morning routine. You know, you had to get up at 6 a.m., do an ice bath and all that. But I would never bash something that essentially has so many positives to it. And for anyone out there thinking of doing it, I love like saying it to people for the first time, because their initial response is like, oh my God, no, I can't do that, you know. Because why? Because it sounds so distressing to them. It's like, it's so discomforting. And that's why it's so beneficial to you, because there's so much discomfort there. And it never ever goes away. Ever. It literally is there forever. No matter if you're doing 30 seconds to a minute to 5 minutes to 10 minutes, the discomfort is always there. It's like you saying, man, it's that win you get every single day. Literally, that voice is always there in the back of your mind saying, I don't want to do this. But yeah, you go ahead and do it. And I just think that's amazing that you can always experience that discomfort, and yet you can always step into it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything you just said there, Tommy. And that's probably the reason I love cold water as well, is that like you said, you never want to do it, and you have to go through so many steps to get yourself into it. Like, you know, it's not just that. And it's like, when, you know, when you go to the gym and you work out, and if you don't really want to work out, you always kind of go lighter on the weight, so you don't have to put in that much effort. But when you're getting into cold water, it's cold from the get-go. And then it's that high afterwards when you're like, fuck, I did not want to do that, but I'm after doing it. And you come out and you just feel, you can't beat that feeling. That's why I love it as well. It's all the mental game with it.
Yeah. For me, it's literally, out of everything I've ever done in my whole life, it's the only thing that has calmed my monkey mind. It's the only thing that when I'm in cold water, I can get still. Like, my mind stops, fully present, because I'm just breathe. That's all I can. It clears my head, you know. And I think you said so many good points, Tommy, and that's even one for me, is like, when you do it enough times, you kind of can appreciate your body as well, because you're like, my body can handle this. Like, it's fucking disgusting, it's uncomfortable, but I actually can handle this, you know. And it's one of those things. You said James Smith, and I was actually going to say it. One of my pet peeves is people who, it's not even cold water, who will bash things, and I think they do it for attention on social media. And a lot of it with cold water, you see them going on about, oh, these ice baths and blah blah blah. And it's like, if you are a professional in the health space, to bash something that overall is going to be a net positive for somebody, for people health wise, like, it's going to improve, and it has helped so many people. To me, that it just seems crazy when we think people's mental physical health is literally declining, and we have professionals in the space bashing things that actually have a positive effect. If anything, if they don't even want to believe it, at least it's neutral, and at least you get the benefit of doing a health conscious activity. But like, so that for me, it kind of drives me nuts. And then I'm like, the saying, a friend of mine, Joe Parrish, always says that, he's like, some things need to be experienced to be understood. And I'm like, that's so true. Because it's like, I would have been a person going, why would you get into cold water? Like, what's wrong with you? But it's like, you need to experience it to understand it. So yeah, it's I think we're all at the point, it's a benefit. Try it, do it. Another one actually for me that I forgot to mention on that was the not using my phone. Honestly, when I do like sauna and ice baths, a big benefit for me is not having a phone, and the social element. Because again, a lot of us, we went to the sauna together as a group, like 7 of us on the weekend. It is a great thing to do as for socializing, which I think is a huge net benefit for people, especially nowadays. We talked about community connection, and the importance of that.
And I think too as well, it's just for people to be aware of, you know, they see people online doing like an ice bath. Oh my God, I did 5-10 minutes. Like you can literally start by doing 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute. It's literally all about building up your tolerance to it. You're not going in to do a cold shower for 2 minutes straight away. It's not a numbers game. Like you're simply just putting yourself into a discomfort position. And the longer then that you can sustain that, the better it is that it's going to be for you. It's not a bragging contest. It's not that I can do this, you can do that. Just put yourself into that position and allow yourself to really feel the benefits of it. Because I've never ever spoken to anyone that has came out of it and said, I haven't felt better after that.
100%. And
Yeah,
I think
always feel
that
good
leads
after.
into our last trend I want to talk about is running and running clubs, which again we've all taken up running, I think, in the last year, all of us. Me doing half marathon, Tommy has done a full and is doing another full, and then Eve and Ro have both done 10Ks over the last few months. It's definitely something I presume all of you have seen a lot more of, like running clubs. There's so many running events now, even in Ireland. I couldn't believe you can literally do a running event like every month. I was sure the only thing was like the Dublin Marathon before. That was the only thing I knew. Now it's like there's even one in Nina in February coming up.
Is there?
So yeah, I only realized a couple of weeks ago somebody said it to me. So yeah, what's thoughts on what would you say the rise of these running clubs and running in general? I think COVID had a big part in this as well.
Yeah, I think
I
it's great just to see that like a lot more people are kind of getting into running, because obviously it's such a handy way to exercise. Everyone can do it. It's free. Just get outside your door, and like it's so easily accessible for people. And for me, like I know a lot of people out there would probably be similar to me in the sense that I've like tried running before a number of times, and anytime I've ran, I've been like, okay, I can't run. It's just not for me. I'm not able to do it, and I absolutely hate it. And like I tried so many times, and I'd kind of give up on it. Whereas this year, then I think seeing you and Tommy obviously taking part in the Great Limerick Run, and all of our clients, there was probably, I think we had 10 clients doing like 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, and just seeing everyone finish up and being like absolutely buzzing after it. I actually had such FOMO. I was like, okay, I need to get on this again. I need to try it again. So I took up running because of that, because of seeing everybody. And I think as well, what a lot of people do when they start running is they try to do too much, and then they kind of fall off really easily. So I kind of made sure that, okay, I'm going to take a really, really gradual approach, starting with running, walking intervals, slowly building it up. And even at that, like my fitness probably would have been able to handle more running than I was actually doing, but I wanted to do it properly. So I really took it slow and took my time to build it up. And because I did that, it just worked out a lot better. And I really began to start actually enjoying it. And then obviously doing my first 5K and doing my first 10K. And now I actually just love it. But I definitely want to do a half marathon someday. I think maybe next year. But yeah, just actually think it's class.
Are you committing to that now, Eve?
Yep.
It's public. I'm just going to jump on.
But yeah, I think the running clubs as well.
Clip that.
The running clubs as well are just really great socially, because you get to meet a lot of people, especially in new places, and it's just good to see the community aspect of it as well.
I'm just going to jump on because I need to go. All I literally will say is, like I said last week, is anything that is going to have a positive influence on your own physical and mental health, then it's a good thing. And we know from years and years and years of studies and research and people doing it, running is good for your physical and mental health. And a big aspect of that is the social aspect of the amount of times or groups or communities that have been created because of people taking up running.
Ro, how's your experience?
I was going to say I'm the same as Eve. I think I tried it a few times, but the same thing, like you tried running for the first time and you do too much at the first time. You end up getting shin splints or getting too sore from it, and you're like, oh, I'm not running ever again. But then I started just after you this year, Eve, and I just listened to what you were saying, the same thing, start slow, do the little intervals. And I love the whole process of building up to it. But now, since I hit the 10K, there was a huge mental block hitting the 10K. But since hitting it, it's so interesting. Like, it's such a mental game, I think, running for me as well, because each run is completely different. There's so, like, the thoughts in your head that you have to, like, just keep pushing past, because you'll be like, your body starts telling you, oh, you can't do this, you're too sore, you should probably stop now, let's give up after this K, okay, let's just make it to the next K. And it's a constant battle in your head. And I haven't joined any running clubs or anything like that, but you know, when you pass other runners, like, there's this, like, unsaid kind of, like, communication between you, that you're just like, you know that you're probably going through a mental game as well, but you're still going. So yeah, I do love the process. I don't know if I'll be doing any of the longer runs, but I'm happy I got my 10K.
You say that now, but I was the same, and I think I'm like a lot of people. I would have identified myself as I am not a runner, and I hate running. I probably still hate running, but I'm a runner. Like, I can run now. So it's funny how I would have, and that's part of the reason why I took it up, because I was like, nearly wanted to prove myself wrong with the whole, again, identity, and kind of, we put ourselves in boxes of we can and can't do these things. It's like, actually, we can do anything really. And that's where I think running has, and even the running clubs I think are great. Like, there's ones in, literally, I see them in like Sydney, Marbella, Dubai, Bali. They've popped up all over the world. There's ones in Nina now, I think. And yeah, there's so many pros with it. I think obviously you get the exercise, like Tommy said. Nature is a big one.
That's
getting
what I was gonna
outside,
say, actually,
running.
yeah.
You have the social element and the community. It's easily accessible. Like, any of us can do it. And I also find it's really, really good for your mental health. And you get better at it quite quickly when you take the right approach, which is cool compared to other things. I will say, I find running, yeah, like the mental game of actually going for runs. I'm like, the gym for me is no bother. There's never, like, I'm not motivated some days, but I'm there. Running is like genuinely having a conversation with myself of why I shouldn't go for a run today. And it's like, I'm still at that. I'm like, how am I having these such big debates with myself to put them off? I like put off runs. So it's kind of interesting that way, because I think sometimes the gym for people is a bit like where running is for me. So I kind of relate and understand in that sense, you know. And that's even like, I'm running over a year. So that's, I think there's definitely a lot of pros with running. I do see some negatives or cons, would you say? First one is injuries. A lot of people get injuries through running, and a lot of it is what Eve, you said, is people who start out make a couple of similar mistakes. So doing too much too soon and not allowing for the recovery and actually adapting. And running is a weird thing, is like, you're not meant to, it's kind of different than like weight training in a way. Is like, weight training, you want to lift as heavy as you can. Running, like, you're not meant to run as fast or as far as you can. You actually have to pull yourself back and build it up over time, which is it's a weird kind of concept for people, because they're like, oh, I'm able to do more, but it's like, you know, then you get shin splints or an injury or something. It's like, yeah, you need to pull yourself back. You need to do less than you think or than you want to. And that's where another one with it, I think, is some people tend to do running as a method to lose weight, which is, we know, not a good, it's the wrong tool for the job. Again, running is fantastic for your fitness, your heart, your mental health. It's not the tool for losing weight. You have to focus on your nutrition. So you see a lot of people who kind of like, even like, oh, I took up running, I haven't lost any weight. It's like, yeah, it's not the, it's because it's not the, you're in the wrong job, you know? And then the last one is, sometimes people focus, I think, too much on cardio and not enough on weight training. So especially as people get older, weight training becomes more and more important. And even for myself, you will hear some people who would say like, do any form of exercise that you enjoy, which, you know, now that I look at it and I'm older, I'm like, for me as a fitness professional, I don't think that's good advice for me to give, because I'm like, people should be doing strength training when you look at the outcomes on health. It's like, we need to find some way to fit this into a person's life, because of the health benefits are so important, you know, not just how you look. So I do feel sometimes people don't focus enough on strength training and maybe focus too much on cardio or running. So that's where I would see maybe a negative, but again, it's just the solution is make sure we're strength training. Yeah, that's all I have.
I think
on that one.
also with running, what
Any
you're
thoughts?
saying, it's so important to do your warm up and stretch beforehand. Because I wouldn't, when I first started running, maybe a couple of years ago, when I tried it again, I was not a runner, but yeah, I never did the warm ups. And then you try and do a 5K and you end up injuring yourself. And even now, when I got back into the run, or when I started running properly this year, was doing the warm ups even before the shorter runs to just get your body used to it. And it makes such a difference. Warming up, stretching, doing your little mobility, and after a run as well.
I'm guilty of not warming up either. I'm like, and it's like, it's like, do as I say,
Yeah.
not as I do. It's like this year when I did the half, that's when I was like, okay, I need to do everything right. And I was like, okay, so I concentrate on warm ups, concentrate on recovery, and everything, like just all the kind of boxes I need to tick, and it definitely
Because
does
that's where
make a
most
difference.
injuries will come from, not warming up.
Yeah, not even just for obviously injury. Yeah, not even just for like injury prevention, but you'll actually feel much better on the run. Your performance will be better. You'll enjoy the run a lot more if you're properly warmed up. And I didn't actually really believe that until I experienced it myself when I didn't warm up properly once. And I was like, what is going on? Why do I actually feel like this? And I didn't actually warm up. That's why I'm struggling on this run. That's why it feels a lot worse than it is, and it just felt a lot harder, a lot tougher.
Yeah, I know most of us as well. Like, why don't we don't do it because we're kind of like lazy in a way, or we're like, oh, a 30-minute run now is like 45 because I have to do a warm up. I have to do like half a k of like a little jog warm up. Like, oh, it's all time, but it's worth it. It's like
That's what.
Especially when you look at it long term. Again, if not just in one run, like look at 10 years, how many.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason I started running was for fitness.
Sorry, bro, cut out.
The whole reason I started running was for fitness, and just I wanted to get comfortable to 10k, like to be able to run a 10k comfortably, kind of thing. And I hit the 10k, and now even the last couple of weeks, I've had that mental block with running, but I've gone out on a Sunday and not even tracked it. It was like, I'm not doing this to try and hit a goal or anything. I'm just going out to enjoy my run. A huge thing you said there, Matt, is like, it's outdoors, you're in nature, you're getting fresh air. There's something so beautiful about exercising outside rather than being stuck in a gym all the time. Just getting the enjoyment from the run rather than trying to chase some goal.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as you, Roisin. I've like major mental block with running over the last couple of weeks. I can't, like, even though I did a 10k back, like a month or two ago, but I think the last 4 weeks I have not been able to run more than 4k. I have like a pure mental block against running at the moment.
You said it there as well, Ro. It's like, weirdly, that was kind of my goal when I started running. That was like my health marker. Is I wanted to be able to just get up off the couch and run 10k. Like that. Even though I did a half marathon, that yes, like even that goal was good. But it's like that's my standard that I wanted. Is like now at any time I want to be physically capable enough just to run 10k. If somebody goes, come on, we're going for a run. That's like my standard that I want to keep, and it's funny that, I don't know, is it age or something now? It's like being physically capable of doing multiple things is kind of important to me now. Like that mobility, being able to move pain free is important to me. Being able to run, lift, do all those things. It's weird. I don't know, is it age or.
But even with like, I think
like 10 years ago, it's just like lift weights.
With the 10k as well, like you have to, the way you're breathing, you have to keep a pace. Like you can't like just go hell for leather. It's all about like your breath and keeping a nice rhythm in your heart and everything. So I think it's just, you feel like your body is just working at a good level when you're able to do it comfortably.
Weirdly, I was actually listening to a podcast while running, what that was saying about running being meditation, which is, I was like, this is interesting. And also I'm running at the same time listening to this. Yeah. But he was saying that about breath work, that it's a form of meditation for him. He made a good point anyway, whatever he was saying about it. I was like, that is interesting.
Yeah, I've listened to...
Yeah, and I think what Roisin just said there as well, what I actually noticed with running, what I actually noticed with running was that the start, when you start running, that's the hardest part, like going from 0 to 1k or 0 to 2k, where you're like, you start running and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to die. This is so hard. I need to stop. That is actually the hardest part to kind of break through. But then when you get up to like 5k or up to 10k and you're running and you're like, oh my God, I'm running. I feel good. I feel a bit more comfortable. I'm able to breathe. I don't feel like I'm going to die. But like, it does take a bit of time to get into that and to get past that point. So even for people that are new to running, that have tried it and they've given up, kind of seeing that, okay, maybe you just need to kind of push through that and you'll get to that point where it feels better and feels more comfortable.
But I was saying about the running high, it's the first few kilometers is always the worst, and then you hit a level of like, it's almost like autopilot. You're just like, you feel like you're floating and you get that high. But also what Matt was saying there about meditation, kind of, I think he's an Irish podcaster and he does a mindful run. It's about 5Ks, the length of his podcast, but it's a meditative where it's just mindful. So he's talking through your body as you're running and you're tapping into your breath. It's so nice because you completely come into your body and you're not focusing on anything else, and it is meditation kind of.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting concept. But yeah, I think overall when we look at it, definitely another positive for people, and just again when we look at health conscious behaviors, activities as that social community element, I think it's huge. So yeah, I think we all agree it's net positive for a trend.
Got our approval.
So
all positives
finishing.
Today.
Yeah, we're all positive. Yeah, they were.
Finishing.
Well, yeah, we're not being negative Nancy's. We have a random question to finish, and today's one is, let me see it. Dun dun dun. What's something that you find difficult, but you think in your mind it should be easy?
Okay, you just cut out for that whole. I didn't hear any of that question. This is interesting. My internet's going to go just for the question.
Start again. What's something that you find difficult, but you think in your mind should be easy?
Yeah, I heard.
Wow. I can never answer these. I just go blank as soon as you ask.
I was going to say.
You said running, Eve, in fairness, which is a cop-out, but
going out for a run. Getting outside for a run.
I was going to say spelling.
The thing that pops into my head is... Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, the thing that pops into my head is, you know, when you lose something that should be there. So I'm like, I can't understand why the things that should be in this spot are not here anymore. And I'm like, why does everything has a place? Why is it not in the place it should be? Like my headphones. I lost my headphones last week, and I'm like, there's just no headphones in the case. How does that happen? In my mind, I'm like, it should be easy. But now they're not there. That's what came to my mind.
That's your just human error.
I'm interested to know, actually, if anyone has any other ones. What's something you find difficult, but you think in your mind it should be easy? I'd love to hear other people's. Must ask Tommy. Right, guys, I think we're all good for another week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy Christmas. This far,
and we will see you all in 2025. Yeah.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you found value in today's show, please take a moment to leave us a review and share it with someone who could benefit. Every single review or share helps us grow the show and will allow us to keep bringing you more great content. Stay tuned for weekly episodes where we'll be sharing more tips and insights to help you take your health, fitness and mindset to the next level. Thanks again for joining us, and remember, consistency beats perfection. See you in the next episode.